Sleep is one of the most critical aspects of training for any hybrid athlete. And I would also argue that it is one of the most overlooked aspects of ways that you can improve as a hybrid athlete. Main reason for this is that as a hybrid athlete, you're going to have a very high training load just due to the nature of the high volume that's associated with training from both a cardio and a strength perspective. And of course, with that high training load comes a high, very high demand to recover. So if you're not sleeping well, you're going to be missing out on both endurance and strength gains because you're not giving your body the chance to fully recover. So I want to start off by diving into some of the benefits that you can see by improving your sleep. And then after that, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into some of the different ways you can improve your sleep to get more benefits. So as far as key sleep benefits goes, there's quite a few that will help with your life in general, but I want to mostly look at things that will help you as a hybrid athlete for now. So number one, your improved time to exhaustion, which is of course going to be absolutely critical for endurance workouts, especially really high intensity endurance workouts, your quality sessions, if you want to think of it that way. Number two, sleep is your opportunity for you to allow your body to repair your muscle and build it back stronger. This is when the adaptation happens. It doesn't happen in the middle of the strength session. It happens when you're sleeping, letting your body repair. Another benefit is it allows your cardiovascular system to rest. So, there's a lot of talk about stress these days, and I want to clarify that stress during a workout is great, but you don't want to be stressed all the time. And sleep is an opportunity for your body to wind down and to not be stressed, to go into that mode where it's able to recover. I think one of the most interesting benefits of sleep is that it helps with skill acquisition. And you might be thinking, how is that relevant to Hyrox and hybrid training? But as I've talked about before, there's 9 different training adaptations, and one of them is the skill adaptation. And this applies to, your running, lifting, Hyrox station. These are all skills, and without actually building fitness, you can get better at each of these just by allowing your body to learn the movement patterns and become more efficient at doing these movements, without actually building more muscle or increasing your aerobic capacity. Next benefit to sleep, lower injury risk, especially, high volume hybrid athletes. Injury risk starts to become a very real thing. It can have a big impact on your training, especially if it's a more serious injury. So that's a nice benefit, something we always want to be avoiding there. Increasing your pain tolerance, again, another great benefit. Not that we necessarily want to be in pain, but the way I like to think of this one is, what if you could push 10% more during your toughest training sessions or during a race? You could push 10% deeper into the pain and the discomfort. I would strongly argue that if you're able to do that, you're going to get a faster race outcome. And again, similar thing with your quality sessions here. When you're training, if you're able to dig a little deeper during each quality session, well, you're going to get a better session in during that quality session. And when you repeat that over time, every time you're doing an intense session, it's going to compound over time and help you build even more fitness. So to me, those are some of the, there's lots of other benefits to improving your sleep, but those are some of the ones that are most relevant to being a hybrid athlete. So I'd like to now dive into some of the different ways to improve your sleep. And this certainly isn't an exhaustive list, but I think it's a really good starting place and give you a lot of information to work with here. So the number one thing, pretty easy to say, uh, can often be harder to actually do, but number one thing here, you just got to get more sleep. That's that's all it is. That's for most people, that's going to be the biggest gains here. Uh, and I do want to emphasize the difference between time of sleep and time in bed when we're talking uh, about numbers here. If I say time of sleep, if you go and you get in bed at 10 o'clock and you wake up and get out of bed at 6, you're in bed for 8 hours, but you're not sleeping for a full 8 hours, most likely. Most likely you're probably closer to 7 or maybe 7.5 because it takes you some time to actually fall asleep initially. And then, of course, there's a chance you wake up during the night. Sometimes you'll wake up during the night, often even a couple times, and it'll be short enough that you won't even notice. But again, if you're not sleeping, then it doesn't count as time asleep. So an important distinction there. And with that, we'll get into some numbers a little bit as far as some very rough guidelines. So to start off, I would say minimum 8 hours of time asleep. So you're going to want to give yourself more than just 8 hours time in bed. Probably 9 hours time in bed would be good here. But anyways, 8 hours of time sleep is a good sort of minimum to aim for to start off. But then from there, I would say even 9 to 10 hours or maybe even 11 can be very beneficial for people who are training hard and doing high volume like most hybrid athletes are. And one little caveat here is that if you look at the research, shows that over 9 hours of sleep can be somewhat concerning for health outcomes. This is generally something that applies to the average person and probably not as much of a concern if you're training hard. For the average person that doesn't have high physical stress on their body, if they're sleeping a lot more than 9 hours, it can be a sign of some underlying issues. Whereas if you're just training really hard and your body needs the extra sleep to recover, it's not quite so much of a concern. In fact, it can even generally be a good thing. So next key area for improving your sleep is sleep timing. So first point here is you want to be keeping your bedtime and wake time within a 30-minute window every day. So you want to keep that as consistent as possible, going to sleep at the same time, waking up at the same time. And this will help set your circadian rhythm so that your body knows when it's time to sleep, when it's time to wake up, and it'll be better at, actually falling asleep and dropping into good quality sleep. And, when it's time to wake up, your body will feel much more ready to go, ready to take on the day. You'll feel awake. And this doesn't need to be, perfect, but the more consistent you are and the more you're able to get this timing dialed in, the more powerful of an effect you're going to feel. Personally, from my experience, my sleep patterns were kind of all over the place in high school and university. When I was in high school, I'd be during the summers, my sleep just kind of shifted slightly later every night to the point where I was going to sleep at like 4 a.m. and waking up at like 2 in the afternoon. During summers or during high school, I wouldn't sleep enough at night, and I would have to take a nap every time I got home. Or in university, I would have some classes, some days with classes starting at 8:30, some days it would start at 11, and that would heavily influence my wake up time. And then, when I got to my last year of university and certainly after university, and I was able to get that much more dialed in. So I just started, waking up at the same time every day and generally going to sleep around the same time, including the weekends, by the way. It's an important point there. Uh, I, it was like I just unlocked a whole new level in my physical performance, and I just started feeling better all the time. So if you're not consistent with your sleep schedule right now, I would strongly recommend at least try it as an experiment, see what happens for you. And I think you'll get a lot of benefit from it. Next point here for improving sleep is what I call, or what has been referred to online as 3-2-1 rule. So pretty simple here. 3 hours before sleep, no food. The reason for this is, your body takes energy to digest food, and it's going to be harder to fall asleep if you're in the digestion process. So if you cut off food 3 hours before, you should find it a little easier to fall asleep at night. And again, for all three of these points here that I'm sort of working my way through, um, the timing doesn't it's not exact, and it's going to vary a little from person to person, but it's a pretty good guideline as far as a starting point to experiment with. Number two of the 3-2-1 rule: no fluids 2 hours before going to sleep. One of the main reasons here is that you won't need to get up. Ideally, you won't need to get up and go pee during the night, or at least you won't need to do it multiple times. But at the same time here, let me caveat this by saying, be reasonable here and don't dehydrate yourself. The last thing you want is to wake up fully dehydrated and have it affect your performance in, your morning workout or whatever. And the number one of the 3-2-1 rule is no screens or blue light 1 hour before bed. So the the light, especially the blue light coming from these screens, is going to disrupt your circadian rhythm and essentially make your body think that, okay, it's the middle of the day, I should be wide awake now, which is obviously not what you want when you're an hour away from trying to fall asleep. And at the same time, you want to let your body and your nervous system, sort of wind down, relax, which will make it easier to fall asleep. And generally, most things you're going to be doing on screens do not produce much of a relaxing effect. So, much better to spend the time just, reading a book, or, just relaxing, listening to some music, podcasts. Makes it much easier to fall asleep. Next category here: caffeine and alcohol. So this may disappoint a lot of people, but at least a 9 hour cutoff before sleep is ideal for caffeine. So if you're going to sleep at 9, you probably don't want to have any caffeine past noon. As far as the alcohol side of thing goes, to be honest, I would just recommend, if you are going to indulge in alcohol, do it as far away from sleep as possible. But really, like, to me, this is a tough one to justify because there's just not really much of anything in the way of benefits from alcohol as opposed to caffeine. There certainly are benefits to caffeine. And again, for both of these, it does depend on the dose, and it does vary from person to person. So again, you can experiment here and figure out what works for you. A final consideration on the caffeine point is, if you're working out late afternoon or in the evening, if you're the kind of person who takes caffeine before your workout, you definitely want to be considering if that is affecting your sleep at all. And related to that point, uh, as far as the later workouts goes, the way you time your exercise in the day can definitely uh, have an impact on your sleep. So the number one thing here is you want to be avoiding it within a few hours of sleep. Uh, Main reason here is that this gets your nervous system highly activated, and it takes time for your body to downregulate and relax and get into that parasympathetic state after a workout. So, you know, if you can do your workouts in the morning or afternoon, early afternoon especially, you're probably going to be in a much better spot and it'll be easier to fall asleep when the time comes for that. If you are going to be exercising really close to sleep, one of the things you can do is just try and downregulate as much as you can after the exercise. So lots of different like breathing exercises or meditations you can do, um, you know, just to help your body start relaxing and preparing to go to sleep. Uh, Another point here on exercise timing is if you're able to, morning workouts are absolutely a great option. Uh, you know, even independent from the sunlight effects, if you're doing it outside, doing morning workouts can help set your circadian rhythm and get your body, you know, into that regular rhythm of knowing when it's time to sleep, when it's time to wake up. And as I just touched on there, if you're doing this outside and getting sunlight exposure early in the morning, again, another huge benefit to setting your circadian rhythm and making sure that you get that sleep routine dialed in. So I hope that's given you a lot to think about and lots of different things you can potentially experiment with to improve your sleep. If you're the kind of person that's watching a video like this, I'm pretty sure you're also the kind of person who wants to take your Hyrox performance to the next level. So if that does sound like you, I would recommend checking out my app, Hybrid Strength Fitness. It'll help you get your training absolutely dialed in. Um, that way you can really find that next level of performance in your next Hyrox race.